it was about a week and a half after the first chemo. And it's like there was this prickly sensation that went across my head. I mean, it was something I sat there going, what is that? You know, it was just this funny sensation. And I realized it was my hair dying. That was the oddest thing. Now, I knew my hair was going to fall out, but you could actually feel that happening, you know. And then it did. It started coming out in handfuls. And I had anticipated that. And I had already determined that I was going to shave my head instead of having hair fall everywhere. I wanted my grandchildren to be involved in it, because up to this point, all they've seen is Grandma, we got to stay away, someone's got a cold, or you can't crawl up on Grandma's lap anymore, you might bump the drains or the incisions, and Grandma's sick, you know. And I wanted them to not see me as a victim, but as someone who was taking charge and being strong and taking charge of dealing with this. And so we had a party, and they brought a friend, and they shaved my head that day, and that was kind of a dramatic thing right there. When I first looked at myself, the first thing I could think of was, oh my gosh, I look like my brother. But then we had these caps, and my daughter had gotten me some cute little caps, and my daughter-in-law had knitted a special hat for me, and I put the hats on, and I never took the hats off. I wanted to be strong, but inside it still was hard for me to face the fact that I had had a mastectomy, that my hair was gone. I don't think a man understands this, because men, there's often male baldness, and I don't know that it affects them like a woman does. So much of a woman's identity, even when they don't realize it, is tied up in their eyes, in their hair, in how they carry themselves. And I'm afraid I let myself fall back, and it was easier. I wasn't going out anyway, but I didn't let anyone see me with my bare head. I had a hard time with that. Well, this was at the end of my chemo. I was at the end, and I was laying on the sofa one day just watching the news, and this human interest story came up about this young girl in Grand Rapids, and she was receiving a henna crown, and she was a cancer patient, and this organization was working with women going through chemo who had lost their hair, and they became living canvases for the artists, basically. But she was talking about how encouraging this was to her, and this whole project, the Crowns of Courage project, was going to be used as art prize entry that year. And if anybody wanted to find out more information, there was a website to go to. So I thought, oh, well, that sounds interesting. Let's go see what it is. So I got online and checked it out and filled out the form. And it was interesting, because I put on the form, I says, I know this young girl was lovely and enchanting. I says, but are you interested in any older ladies? Because she was 17. And I guess that really caught them. Because yes, they wanted to show that cancer goes the whole gambit of ages. From, for our youngest crown that we had involved in Crowns of Courage was 7, up until I was the oldest one at 67. It crosses all kinds of boundaries as far as age, race, economic. It doesn't matter. Cancer takes you anywhere you are. So I went to a gathering before my crown, and there was 4 or 5 of us there. Altogether, there were 22 women that were crowned through Crowns of Courage. And the first gathering, there was 4 or 5 there, and we all come in with our chemo caps on, and of course some of them are much braver than I, and we were there and they took their caps off, and I can remember Dave, the photographer, saying, "Carol, take your cap off," and I'm going, no, nobody's seen this since I started. He says, "You're going to have to take it off sometime." I said, "Yeah, I know." So when it was time, the whole experience, we went in, and at that point they were videotaping and asking many of these same questions. And I can remember Dave saying, "Are you ready now?" And on that camera I took my cap off, and here's my head, and then they started to work. And Amanda Gilbert and Steve Stone were the henna artists, and they were working. Amanda was working on my arms and my back, and Jessica was the makeup artist, and she was working on my face. And it took about 2 hours to do the complete henna crown, and that included my head, my arms, my back. It was nothing I'd ever experienced before. And they're just drawing all of this beautiful artwork freehand. They are truly artists, and during that time they were so compassionate as well. Amanda has been working with cancer patients for some time, and she will go and do this just to bring encouragement and healing. Her henna, she infuses with lavender, which is a very healing essential oil, and then the artwork is beautiful. But what they chose for me just come out of conversations we were having. I mean, they were asking about my family, about what I do, and I talked about my Bible study ladies, and I talked about some of the lessons we had learned, and when we got done here, I had we talked about the parable of the vines and the branches, and where if Jesus says, "You abide in me and I will abide in you," and all of a sudden I had vines and branches all up and down my arms, and a rose. We talked about roses, how I couldn't manage to grow roses, but I loved them, and I had a beautiful rose on the top of my head and jewels all around, and it was amazing. I mean, and for the first time, then they had the reveal where you see yourself. You're not seeing any of this going on, and then you get to see yourself, and I was astounded. I have never looked so beautiful in my life. It was amazing, and because Jessica had done all this beautiful makeup, I think I looked 20 years younger. And then I had eyelashes where I had lost my eyelashes for a long time. All of a sudden I had eyelashes again. It was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. Then we went from there into a professional photography shoot with Dave, and he could take lighting and bring beautiful shadows forward and bring the beauty out onto the photographs. And so you sit there, and all of a sudden, after months now, you've gone through months and had body parts cut off and felt like days you couldn't get off the sofa. All of a sudden, this whole beautiful person was standing there looking at me out of the mirror, and then that was me. It was almost unbelievable. It was such a lift, just an emotional lift, that it was just so encouraging. And like I said, it was about 2 hours to get the henna done, and then another couple of hours in the photo shoot, so it was a long day. And when we come home that night, I took care with the henna, because the henna is a paste and it goes on the skin, and it's the paste that as it dries will flake off, but it has dyed the skin underneath. But I wanted it to last until I could show my mother and father. So I took care and wrapped my head and took care so it would stay. And then I had people I wanted to show, because all of a sudden I got this, I'm looking beautiful, you know, and I wanted to show people this blessing that had been given to me. And so I had decided I wanted to go show my son-in-law, who worked at a Myers. And so, but the first thing is like, okay, I'm going to walk into Myers without a cap on. And it was an interesting thing as people would react to me, you know. Some wanted to look, but they didn't want to insult me or something by staring, you know. There were many people that came up and said, "You look beautiful. What is this?" And I was able to share this experience with them and say, you know, and be able to say, I have had breast cancer. I have just finished chemo. This is in celebration of the strength of coming through this for me. But you know, it was at that point, I think I had up to this point not gone out without my caps on. That I just sat there and I'm going, you know what? This is the head God gave me. And it's okay if you have a problem, if someone has a problem with it, that's your problem, not mine. And I very rarely wore a cap after that again. It changed that whole thing. Even I felt beautiful, but it gave me the courage to go without the caps. And then something changed. It's like, it's okay. It's okay, and I'm getting better. The henna is an extract, a ground plant material that stains your skin, and our henna artist mixes that with essential oils so that the healing properties of that henna come forward as well. The henna crown, now what they were doing was actually creating a crown on our heads. Our head become the living canvas. And in my case, I had a beautiful rose on the top, but then all the beautiful artwork around, so that I literally had a crown around my head, as well as the artwork on my arms and a beautiful cross on my back. This was all done to beautify what is normally looked at in a negative way as we're going through the cancer treatments. I would say to someone who is just starting this that it's going to be okay. First of all, you're going to be okay. Everybody's path is unique to them. But the cancer treatments for breast cancer have come along so far that the treatments aren't as bad as they were in the past. And there's a tremendous amount of survivability, I'm going to call it. There was something in all the material that they gave me that talked about like 98% 5-year survivability of breast cancer. Now, 5 years doesn't sound like much, but you know what? That's 98%. And actually, when you hear more statistics, it's people are saying, I had mine 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 17 years ago. So this is a highly survivable thing. And if you take the medicine at the time they tell you to take it in the regular intervals, then that decreases the amount of uncomfortableness and the sickness that you feel. And then the other thing I would say is ask your doctors. Make sure you ask questions. Read the material from the American Cancers, where I got much of my material. Read the material. There's a lot of information in there about how to care for yourself, and questions to ask your doctor so that you know what's happening. But after that, just let people take care of you. Let people be of service to you. And know in your heart that it's going to be okay. Just take it one day at a time, one step at a time, and you'll get through it. You'll be okay.